Roy Sutton, 1011 Lane. Mr. Mayor, council members. I've been up here before when we've talked about this issue down there, and it all started on Levitt Lane. The one thing that we noticed right out of the gate down there, whenever we called police department, we called city officials, there was some inconsistency right out of the bat, right out of the gate. In the first meeting, at the first party, there was an excuse made that was laid off onto a new dispatcher. We get into the second pool party. Some civil complaints were taken. Nobody would prosecute them. We were told at that time that there was going to have to be a new ordinance written. We had no ordinance that we could enforce, but in fact, the ordinance was enforced. If you live down in the area of Whitey Lee Lane and Emory, I talked to the folks down there while I was trying to get some idea of just how far-reaching this noise was going. I spoke to the people twice at that house and that resident there on Whitey Lee Lane. They said the police did come to their house twice. Second time when they came there, they was told either shut it off or turn it down. You will be cited. Now the reason they weren't cited was because they complied. It wasn't because there was no ordinance to enforce. They were made to believe there was an ordinance at that time. But down on Levitt Lane, we got nothing. Absolutely nothing. You know, and during this time, I never heard once anybody even agree in principle that we had the right to live in our homes in peace and quiet, to enjoy our property without the thumping of the bass and these pool parties. And we never asked them not to have them. We've heard comments on that. But, you know, this thing has been slanted from the get-go. And the city's attempted to minimize this. And what we've went through down there. Now, a gentleman has read the new ordinance. His name is Scott Van Lint. He's went through it, and he's written a memorandum here on this subject. And he mentions a lot of things here that I think are legitimate concerns. They fall in line with exactly what we've been worried about. And he talks about unfairness. He talks about double standards. A meter's going to be used. A sound meter's going to be used on Levitt Lane because we live next to the Casablanca. But if you live over in Whitey Lee Lane, it's going to be up to an officer's good judgment. How can this be fair for everybody? How can we get the same treatment as everybody? We can't. You need to trash this thing, throw it away. You need to go back and write a fair and equitable ordinance that represents everybody in Mesquite, everywhere. And that's the only right thing to do here. Nobody gets favorable treatment.
Mayor, council, staff. The noise ordinance. Mesquite.
Need your name.
Lex Hall, Mesquite resident for 23 years, also employee of Mesquite Gaming. Mesquite Gaming, despite comments, all the comments, does respect the quality of life for every resident of Mesquite. We appreciate their concerns. And Mesquite Gaming wants to comply with all ordinances. And we're happy with the first draft that was written a couple of weeks ago, but now it's been changed. We believe it is too constricting. The Casapalooza events are only 6 a year out of 365 days. These events and all the events that we do bring many, many people to Mesquite, fill the hotel rooms. And filling the hotel rooms, the city receives room taxes, just like the LECA. These room taxes are spent to do more community-wide. events. One major project several years ago that this tax money, room tax money, financed was the rec center, almost totally, between the LBCA and the monies that the city received. This money does very good things, but we have to fill the rooms to do that. These events, like Casapalooza, fill those rooms. The trickle-down effect from these events affects, in a good way, every other business in town. But by setting this decibel level too low is only going to create more problems. I don't know how it's going to be enforced, because if you was to go on any street corner or any neighborhood in town and use the decibel meter, you would exceed at any time of the day those levels. And I suggest that probably we do a poll and drive around the city, use the decibel with all the people involved, city, police, and read those decibel levels just to see what they really are. Because most of the time, on any neighborhood street, you will be exceeding the decibel levels with just regular traffic and city noise. I hope that there's some negotiations left open, and maybe there's some middle room. I hope there's time, and the city will be able to study it, maybe table it, and negotiate. Maybe there's a middle ground that we can all come away with and be happy with.
Mr. Hall, you've exceeded your 3, so you can wrap it up.
I have, but I have permission for 3 minutes.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Thanks.
Nice try.
Jean Johnson, Mesquite residents. I was wondering if some of the concerns that were raised in the tech meeting were addressed. I hadn't heard anything about a number of things that I remember hearing in that meeting. Should I be specific? Somebody had mentioned about the baseline noise, and I agree with her because I used to live next door to some teenagers, and the minute mom and dad left, the basement way up, and I literally would have pictures and other things on the wall moving in time with the music. Somebody else had also mentioned about, well, what if somebody just decides that I'm not going to pay whatever the fine is? What are we going to do then? Just write them another ticket they're going to ignore? And I also wasn't sure what the decision was on, once you get a permit, who decides what you get as a variance, or if there is a variance provided?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Chuck Hansen. I live at 920 Levitt Lane. And well, before I start, I just wanted to say thanks to the city of Mesquite for letting the Mesquite Motor Mania show go on again this year, and thanks for the city dignitaries trophy I got for my loud, obnoxious wail. Really appreciate it. Now, for those who don't know, the Motor Mania is a 4-day-long car show here in Mesquite. And it features over 700 cars each time, virtually all of them running open headers, making as much noise as possible. And we're encouraged to go around all the casino properties, including the one directly behind Levitt Lane. In fact, they have the Roaring Engines competition at Levitt Lane, right across at the Casablanca. Never heard the neighbors complain about that. My consideration on this whole ordinance is, what we have a couple of people on my street who apparently wield a great deal of power. I've seen in the newspaper, they point out they've lived here for 74 years and they've given land to the city of Mesquite. but I still don't think that gives them the right to tell the casino they can't have pool parties. The issue here isn't the noise. The issue is they don't like the pool parties. And I don't think it's right for the city to make an entire ordinance based on their personal argument with the Casablanca Hotel. So I hope you'll look this over. I noticed with the new decibel levels that we just were given, not only will I not be allowed anymore to play my own drum set in my living room, which is one of the reasons I moved here, is have the freedom to do what I want inside my own house. I'll exceed the decibel level doing that. I'll exceed the decibel level playing Frisbee with my dog in the front yard, and I'm not happy about this at all. So I'm hoping you guys will reconsider what you're doing here and consider the fact that if you're going to make an ordinance, it should be for the city of Mesquite and not for some of the residents of Levitt Lane. Thank you.
I was going to, Yoli Bell, 180 Pinnacle Circle. I was going to keep my mouth shut, but I'm not. I think this gentleman made it very clear that the ordinance needs to be written to represent everyone, not just Levitt Lane. I live on the other side of town. We have parties, stretching my neck. We have parties across from our home where the clubhouse is, pretty much on a regular basis.
Hold 1 second, Ms. Bell.
Excuse me, because Ms. Bell is signed up as a candidate, she needs to introduce herself as candidate. Sorry.
Please, I'm sorry, I forgot as well.
I
You'll
didn't
need to
think
introduce
about
yourself.
it.
Thanks.
I'm a candidate for city council. Anyway, they have parties on a regular basis, and there's a definite difference between base and people laughing and talking and celebrating. The ears, as we all know, everyone is sensitive from one degree to another. Some suffer severe headaches just from noise, and others have heart problems, others have migraines. So we need to respect everyone. I think it's imperative that we support events, but I also think it's imperative that we respect our neighbors. I know we have an event coming up, not too long, I think it's this month, at the Eureka. I'm not crazy about the sound that it's going to create, but we're probably just gonna say it's bringing money into Mesquite. And I think it's very important that we support Mesquite's growth. Again, I don't like the noise, but I tolerate it. One last suggestion would be, and it may be totally irrational on my part, is that if pool parties started, it hasn't been noted, I haven't heard them gentlemen say that pool parties are in the evening or during the day, but if they are during the day, have them start at whatever hour they start, and then at a certain hour in the evening, move them indoors into the club, into the showroom, if for instance in Casablanca, or into the bar area, and that really is to their advantage because now they're feeling good and spending more money. So that's an option. Thank you.
I'm really short. Good evening, Mayor, Council. You saw me at the tech review, Julia Vett, Clark Street. I am here by myself. I disagree with the gentleman that spoke. It's not all about Levitt Lane. I live over on Clark Street near the middle school. That concert is clearly audible from my home. I did mention in the tech review that I do have a tape of different nights of the concert. I'm willing to be present and allow that tape to be heard, but not release the tape if it made any difference in a decision. Those of us who are not on Levitt Lane are not saying that we don't want these pool parties. I go to the Casa. I went to one of those pool parties to see how loud it was. We just want a fair and honorable decision for everybody in the city of Mesquite, not just Levitt Lane, not just Trailside. People spoke at the tech review about the club envy. We all have concerns just about noise and for it to be fair. Thank you.
Mayor, Councilman Bruce Hughes, Mesquite. Mr. Hall alluded to the fact that the casinos pay taxes. I do too. And all these people out here pay taxes. The people that are complaining about the noise, they pay taxes. As far as I can see, noise and vulgar language is unacceptable. And for the gentleman that says it's just the people on Levitt Lane that are complaining, my address is 629 Mountain View Drive. You'll check the map. That's behind the Eureka, not even involved with the process. Thank you for your time.
Mayor, Council, I'm Dave Harbalak, resident of Mesquite here about 4.5 years. I live in Sun City. I've stood before you before with regards to noise problems we've had up there at the with regards to the sports complex. And again, I applaud the lady saying, you people are supposed to be working for all of the city, not just a few people and some of the businesses that bring in money here. So are you working for all of us, or are you working just for whatever your own interest is? I talked to you some time ago with regards to the noise up there, and we had the same problem as you have apparently here at the CASA. You call the police department, they come up, and I talked mainly to a dispatcher. He says, well, there's not much can be done. Well, why do you have ordinances on the board or on record that you can't enforce? I've never heard of such a thing. I was in law enforcement for 39 years, and that everything that's on the books can be enforced. Yeah, there's limits, but everything is enforceable. And I think my suggestion is you take these same decibel levels that now that apparently you have set, and I want all of you to go up there and stand in some of the residents in Sun City, or even do it over here, and play those decibel levels and see how you like it. I'm sure none of you live in these close proximity areas, so it doesn't bother you. But for the residents who live there, it is a concern. So I think, first of all, before you just say, yeah, we're going to do this, you need to take your meters and go stand in front of some of these houses and replicate what the noise is at these different venues, and then make a determination rather than without anything to support your vote. Thank you.
Sandra Raymaker, Mesquite citizen, candidate for City Council. Mayor, City Council and staff. First thing I'd like to do is say thank you, staff, for the work that you did on trying to put this ordinance together. Next, my comment goes to, why do we have an ordinance that wasn't enforceable? That doesn't make any sense to me. And we have several different categories of people here in Mesquite. We have citizens, older, younger, in between. We have businesses. People care. People moved here for the quality of life. And I think we need to give consideration to the full quality of life equally to everybody. My biggest concern is that you're looking at putting forth another ordinance that you're saying, if we don't like the way it goes and it doesn't do what we think it's going to do, we can bring it back and change it again. So that makes me think that maybe you haven't researched it far enough, that maybe there's some more things to be considered. Thank you.
David Baldwin, I'm a businessman in town, and I live here in town. And I do manufacture equipment that makes noise. And I do sound attenuation engineering on my products. And first of all, I want to say that I know sound can be very annoying to people, so I'm sympathetic to the sound. I'm not going to be very popular because I think the city's ordinance has been well thought out, and I think the previous decibel levels are adequate. The problem is even looking at the last tech review, Officer Tracy had his sound meter on the average. The technical review meeting had his meter running, and the average came out, if I recall, 67 point something. If we move it to 65, you won't be able to use your backyard without a special use permit, because you can't play in your backyard. Your kids can't play in your backyard if it's 65. If you go in, and I have some equipment, so I have some calibrated sound equipment, and I took a reading of my two air conditioners, my air conditioning units, and one of them read 67 point something, and the other one ran 72. So nobody's gonna be able to run their air conditioner at night without being in violation of your noise control ordinance. So, and one of the things is most people don't understand about sound is there's certain energy levels, there's sound power, sound pressure, and certain sound frequencies. It goes through a band. There's 9 points, 8 octave bands that they read from 8 kilohertz down to 31.5 hertz. The 31.5, the 63, and the 125 hertz are what carry. Those are the sounds that carry. I will guarantee you're going to be able to have homes that you're going to have rattling windows in them, and it's going to be within the sound meter because it's the low frequency they're carrying, and it's look at the whole spectrum. The high frequencies get blocked very easily, the low frequencies carry. So to get rid of the low frequencies is an exceptionally difficult over travel time, okay? So one of the things is and everybody in town has fair use. Real quickly, on the industrial end, you can't set it at 75. You've got to set the industrial areas at exposure rates as I'm rated on OSHA. If you say 75, I can't set up cranes, I can't do lifting, I can't run my 1,000 horsepower engine that I do testing with. I won't be able to run any of that thing because I can't stay within the sound ordinances. You're really going to have to review that, but I think the structure of it's good, and I think the 75, 65 is good, but you really need to look at the industrial on a completely different basis of sound exposure over time that OSHA regulates all businesses at. Thank you.
Cindy Delaney, Mesquite resident, and we're all out of compliance. After the tech review, candidate for city council, I was thinking it. After the tech review, Officer Fields showed me a neat little app. If you have a smartphone, you can download. And we've all been sitting here hitting 70, 80, some with big voices like me and Craig, hit really high on this. The deal is nobody complained. So no matter what you set these levels at, if you set them at 100 and nobody complains, then there's been no violation. Or there might have been a violation, but nobody's getting a ticket. So I think you're gonna have to you're between a rock and a hard place right now. I've been listening to both sides of this. You listen to people that it bothers, and like Dave said, maybe those noise levels wouldn't register on the decibel meter. But if it's bothering them, then they deserve our respect as well. But at the same time, business has to go on. You have to be able to use a little bit of judgment and be grown up about some of this stuff. I think Tracy's probably got some readings from the back of the room, right? I'm sorry, Officer Fields has some readings from the back of the room right now that would shock everybody. But nobody called the police and said there's a disturbance. So I mean, I think we have to really take a hard look at that. I think that what Lex said made a little bit of sense, and he actually was saying the same thing the other guy was. Let's go around the city and find out what the true decibels are before there's something loud going on. Start there.
Jennifer Rever, 1010 Levitt Lane. Each of the city council members today should have gotten a letter from me concerning what my concerns were with this bill. Because this is open discussion about Bill 469, I just need to take 1 second. The gentleman who stood up here from Levitt Lane, the gentleman he was referring to is my father-in-law. That's the man who donated half of that road. That's the man who's lived there for 73 years. And it's very offensive to hear that that man, you guys will take his $25,000 in property taxes and give no representation to. That's what it feels like, guys. That's what it feels like. When you can say you've lived in this town for 73 years and you've watched it grow. Nobody's saying no pool parties. So again, Chuck, you're wrong. It's not about the pool parties. It's about the rocking windows. It's about my house shaking. It is about my children hearing lewd and crude language. I don't care about the pool parties. I've been over to myself to see firsthand what they do. I don't care what they do on the other side of the wall. When that Casablanca was built 17 years ago, it was to stay on that side of the wall. For 17 years, we have had no problems until the pool parties. He's right. The motor mania comes to town. We don't say anything. We suck it up for a weekend. A lot of the time, we even go and enjoy the activities. But whenever we sit in a meeting with City, that Craig Hafen had kindly put together with us, and we asked, if this works, do you plan on doing more? And we were told yes. So the problem isn't the 5 pool parties a year, guys. The problem is if it works. The problem is in that language. So in concern with Bill 469, there's a lot of wording in there that has a lot of loopholes. A lot of people like me are concerned. I stand up here as one voice representing a lot of people who are too afraid to come up and say what I'm saying to you guys. So we need to take consideration. The old residents, yeah, they deserve respect. The new residents, absolutely too. We have to do something that works for everybody. And so whether it's the motor mania, I'm afraid you guys are gonna get complaints about that. You just haven't heard from them yet, guys. We need to decide what it is Mesquite wants to be. Are we a retirement community? Do we respect each other? Or is it just an all-out whoever can get away with whatever for today? So that's what I have to say, and I would encourage you guys to table this, look at it closely, because amendments to something that we know today is not going to work, it just doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Don Muse. Everything that we have been complaining about, noise, is represented here in Scott Van Zant's memo on legal review. All of them appear to be bona fide, at least from a legal moment. My concern now is that we haven't had an opportunity to actually sit down and conciliate these things. I know we have been working on that for some time, but please do not vote this thing into being as a city code. Give us a chance to sit down. There's a lot of things we can agree on, but do not vote on this thing tonight, and give us a chance to conciliate it. You've had pretty good luck with it so far. A lot of things we can agree on. But noise is noise, no matter how you obfuscate it with dingbats. If it's disturbing noise, it's disturbing noise. And that point is made graphically by in this legal review that you all have. Do not vote on this tonight. Give us a chance to get together and conciliate some of these things. Thank you.
Bill Wells, Mesquite citizen. I apologize for not having read through all of the city ordinance, but I was wondering if any of you could have considered the noise that our emergency response vehicles make, because it appears to me that they make more noise than anything in the city. And, you know, nobody complains about those, but you might think about them and make an exception to the law. And then I'll take this opportunity, since nobody else has complained about airplane noise, I'll complain about airplane noise. And I think we ought to move them 12 miles southwest of town.
Good evening, Mayor, City Councilman. My name is Toby Burnside. I'm with Envy Nightclub and Lounge. I'm one of the co-owners there. And thank you. Glad I'm still popular somewhere here. You know, noise is noise, and it's depends on who you are, what noise is, I believe. We've had some complaints in the beginning when we opened our club that the bass was too loud and that they could hear the people speaking. And so we took special precaution to this because, you know, our business depended on it. And so we started doing our own tests and going to our own property lines. And the noise that the people that said that were complaining about us, at the volumes and the noises that they were, I mean, we you know, turn our volume up and see and test here and hit these levels, and then we'd be able to be at our property line, and all of a sudden a car would come by and you could no longer hear our noise. You could only hear the cars. And the cars were further away from us than our property line, so, or than from our building. So that's where I go back to noise is noise to certain people and not to others. And I even brought this up with our neighbor that had the issue with us, and I said, well, from your residence, are you able to hear the cars? And he says, well, yeah, but we expect that. And I said, okay, well, what's the bigger problem? He says, well, I can hear the voices outside of your club. You know, when people leave or when they're out on the patio, I can hear voices. And that's people talking. I mean, but to him, being able to hear that because he had not been able to hear it the month prior to us opening, that was noise to him. And so volumes and decibel you know, all these readings and stuff, it all depends on what people consider noise. And again, you know, I mean, just like they say with the airplanes flying over, it's a big issue in big cities. We kind of laugh about it here, but you know, San Diego, you can only fly out after 7:30 a.m. because that flights go right over the city. So, in regards to the castle pool parties, I understand that they probably are loud and the neighbors are hearing them and it's driving them crazy. But the casinos are a big part of this community, whether we go to them or not. I know for a fact that Eureka, Casablanca, Virgin River, all of these guys draw attention to the city, which draws attention to my business, and we've got to make sure that we don't create amendments and do things that are going to drive their business away, that's going to affect roll downhill and hit some of us smaller guys as well. So I know for a fact the pool party nights, we see our business increase those nights because they go there and then they come over to our place after. So I just, again, I want everybody to make sure you know what you're doing when you do this and keep everybody in mind. And the neighbors, we don't want them, you know, disrupted either, but just appreciate all the work you've done so far. Thank you.
Council members, I'm Matt Oster, 530 Hayden's Alley, Mesquite, Nevada. Lived here for about 16 years, and basically I'm a taxpayer just like everybody else. I'm young. You're young, you have fun. There's fun things to do around this town, being that the pool party is one of them. It's not happening all the time. It's happening 6 times out of the year. I live right by there. It goes away, the time, you know, and then it's done. It's bringing in revenue to this town. The motocross events, you can hear the motorcycles, everything running. I used to ride. It's a hobby, it's fun, people do it. It brings people to this town. The softball events, you hear people cheering and chanting all night long. It's bringing in revenue. It's bringing in more money for this town that desperately needs it right now. It needs the help, and anything that can happen to this town is better. It's the thing that needs to happen. The more that we can do for this town, granted be a couple of days, it's well worth it. Then you have the silence still. It's still a great town to be in. I love it here. It's quiet, but there's things to do. And there's things to do for the younger guy. Instead of going to Vegas, where it is, you know, we can have our things here too. We can keep it local. And that's what I like the best about this town. Thank you.
Jerry Greenway, 1030 11th Lane. I'm glad I'm not a politician or have a future in that, because you guys have got your job cut out for you.
we started this thing because we had to, because you couldn't stay in the house. You know, we kept telling everybody it was the base was eating our lives, and that didn't get any attention. So here we are, you know, did you guys decide that we're important, or you don't? We're not going away. There will be a rally on your front door. We'll do all kinds of things. You know, we're geared up, we're ready. If that's what it's got to take, we'll meet you. Thank you.